Okay, we're going for the water bottle flip. I don't know what to make of that. Hey there everybody, and welcome back to another Blender tutorial. Today we're going to make a water bottle disappear using not a jump cut. I want to specify this isn't a dumbass effect. We are going to be using object removal, using 3D tracking, clean plate generation. Basically, this tutorial is PhD level. So, you get to get your bachelor's, master's, and PhD in like 15 minutes. Which is better than spending a lot of money. And what the fuck am I talking about? Okay, so let's get a water bottle to disappear. Starting off with the original footage, I'm starting off with a DaVinci. You can use any video editor you want. I don't give a fuck. Just pick one. You can use Blender even. What I want to do is I want to separate the beginning of the footage and the end of the footage where the effect is. So you can see that for some reason this footage is sideways because I filmed it on my phone. So I'm just going to rotate it by 90 degrees. By the way, if you want the original source footage, I will make that available on Patreon. Wait, not position. Change the scale to 1.78. That's because it's a 16:9 ratio. 16 divided by 9 is 1.778. Okay, so here we have the shot. I take a water bottle, I flip it, and it's on the ground, obviously. So we just want to remove it. I'm gonna find the frame right where I throw it, like here. So this part of the footage doesn't need any effects, so I'm separating it to save us a bit of work. And then this part of the footage is where we need to do our effect. So I'm gonna render that out. To do that, I'm going to go to the render tab, and I know this part isn't like Blender, we'll get to it. So I've marked my in and out point, export this using whatever settings you want on the desktop, and I'm gonna call this VFX footage and render that out. And now we get to do all the tracking and the removal and all this. So in Blender, and by the way, here I have the scene that shows you what we're going to do. We're basically going to make a plane object with a piece of the carpet texture that we're going to project. That's the plan, and it's always good to have a plan. If you don't have a plan, what happens? You have sex without a condom, just dumb shit, okay? Wouldn't know. Okay, so here's what we are going to do. Let's do a fresh Blender scene. Motion tracking. So open up the movie clip editor. In the movie clip editor, load the footage. So I'm looking for VFX footage. Beautiful. A couple things about tracking if you've never done it before. If I'm going to pop your tracking cherry. Color management, set it to standard. This is just so that the shot looks like what we filmed in a sense. Also, we want to match the project frame rate. So you can see this was filmed at 30 frames per second. So I'm going to make this 30 frames per second. Set scene frames makes the project the same length as the clip. Prefetch loads it into memory, and now we have the shot that we want to track. Without getting too detailed here, because maybe you've done tracking before or not, we want to just have 8 trackers that exist throughout the shot. I'm control clicking here. We want 8 trackers that exist throughout the shot coherently through the whole thing. This will give us a camera solve. For each tracker, I want it to be normalized, so it's invariant to lighting changes. So if a shadow passes over it, we don't care. If it gets brighter, darker, doesn't matter. And for the match type, I'm going to set it to previous frame, just so that it's more sticky. Each frame, it's going to look at the previous frame and track that instead of looking at some keyframe on frame 1, right? So let's see. Control click to add a frame, or a tracker. Control T to track forwards, and you can see that track made it the whole way through. Control L to lock it. So it looks like 8 trackers is a lot of work, but when you just like lay them down and you just start like tracking, it really is kind of like a 30-second job. So we can even add multiple trackers at the same time. Some of these might fail, but just like the school system, you send everybody in there. Some of them fail, some of them don't, and that's just what it is. It's a sad reality. Track all of them forwards. Lock the trackers. Take the ones that do not survive or like go off frame, and we can delete them. Okay, we have 4 trackers, not bad. I'm going to add a few more, and hopefully some of these make it through. And you want to have some dispersion or some variety of where it is in 2D and three-dimensional space. So I'm putting them all over the screen and in different depths of the carpet. Okay, did any of these survive? Okay, I think we got 2 more trackers. Not bad. And you could keep the ones that don't survive. It's not like a big deal, but okay, so we are at 6 trackers. We need 2 more. I'll just like spam them all over the place. Some of these got to make it, right? Track forwards. Okay, we got 2 more, which should mean that we have 8 total, and we can see if we get a solve out of that. So again, the reason we're doing this is I want a camera solve that will let us track a plane onto where the water bottle is, and we do a clean plate removal. Okay, so we have 8 trackers in 2D and 3D space dispersed. Go to solve. For the keyframe, we want to pick 2 frames where there's a lot of parallax difference. So relative to each other, they look like they're like, imagine you look at the stars. No matter where you turn, you can't really tell how far apart they are because they're so fucking far away. We don't have parallax. But if I put my hands right here and you go back and forth, you can see one crosses over the other. There's parallax, which is a cool name. If I have a kid, I'm calling him Parallax. Keyframe. We want 2 frames with a lot of parallax. So as I dip here, I think that's pretty good. So let's go from frame, not fame, not yet, to frame 90. 50 to 90, solve camera motion. We got a solve error of 2.47. That's code for shit. We want our solve error to be under a pixel. Here's a little trick. Enable focal length, solve again. Now we're closer to a pixel. Not bad. Focal length, we'll just try out a bunch of focal lengths and pick what likely is the amount of zoom that I filmed with. And you can see that right here. In track, in camera, in lens, you can see it says, oh, it's roughly 18 millimeters. Okay. What else? We could optimize a little and try to lower our solve error. I'm just going to do that a little, I guess. So I'm going to display the info of these trackers, which tells me which ones are low error and high error. This one is 1.51. Decrease the weight, resolve. Now it's lowered our error. 2.54 is hot garbage. Lower that, solve again, and boom, just like that, we're down to less than a pixel. I'm happy with that. So now what we want to do is, now that we have a camera solve, we want our camera to be incorporated in the 3D viewport. To do this, hit Setup Tracking Scene, and now you can see our camera is moving with the thing. Why does the plane look like it's not there? It's not oriented. So just click 3 trackers, hit Floor, and now you can see the plane is tracking correctly. In fact, what we can do, if we select our camera, is move our coordinate system so it's like more centered on where the water bottle is, and we could rotate it. Actually, we could do this relative to the 3D cursor, so we have a nice even coordinate system, and just make sure that looks like it's tracking on well. I'm happy with that, boys. I'm happy with that. Okay, so let's just put a plane. This is going to be our clean plate of where the bottle is. It doesn't need to be bigger than the area that the bottle is taking up on the floor. So just make sure the bottle is contained inside this clean plate. And now if we just kind of like go to the first frame and extract a bit of texture from here, we could paste it over. Now I want to make this a bit smaller because you can see this area has the water bottle in it. So I'm just going to do that. We could even do a rotation. So I'm just sampling a bit of the carpet. Okay, I think that's going to work. So let's do a save. I'm gonna call it available on Patreon because that's where you can get it, boys. On Patreon. What we want to do is we want to extract a clean plate from the first frame. Go to shading, make a material. Our material should be a projection material. What do I mean by that? I mean we're going to load in an image texture, being the footage. So VFX footage, that's what's going to be projected onto here. And we want to do it so it's not taking the whole footage, but it's just taking what's inside the window, kind of like we're looking at just the section that we want. Okay? To make this more clear, I'm going to enable transparent, and you can see it's isolated, you know, what's in this part of the shot, as you can see. Okay, so I want to extract what's from the first frame. To do this, I need to bake a image, so I'm going to make an image texture, make a new one, call it carpet, something like that, and go to cycles, because Eevee doesn't have bake support yet. So we just make sure you have your object selected, your image texture node selected, and then in the bake options, just disabling motion blur, I want to bake out the emission pass with no frame bake. You can see it's calculating. And there we go. That's our piece of texture. Alt-Shift-S to save it on the desktop, call it carpet. Beautiful. The nice thing about this is the reason we're doing this and not just using the windowed coordinates is those are variant. They're variable depending on where we look at it, right? So it's changing, right? We're getting a window into it. But now that we baked out this texture, you can see it's actually stuck onto the surface since it's using UV coordinates. And you can see, I mean, the track isn't perfect, but you can see what it's doing. By the way, if you're asking yourself why is it so bright compared to the thing, that's because our camera background images isn't full brightness. So now it looks like it blends in a bit more. Now, if the track isn't perfect, like you can see there's a bit of shift, what we can do is kind of reposition it over time, right? So let's see. Here, we'll keyframe it, and then on the last frame, it needs to be kind of in local space, brought a little on the x-axis. Something like that. Keyframe, so now this plane's actually going to slide the tiniest bit, if you can tell, and it's just going to correct for that. And this is what we want to render and place on top of the footage, right? Just this carpet render. So I'm going to give it a bit of motion blur since the shot had a bit of motion blur. And what do we want to do? We want to get rid of the light, the background render layer. This is all stuff that comes from setup tracking scene. In compositing, get rid of everything that isn't the render layer. Boop, boop, boop. We just need the raw render. So if we render a frame, it looks like this. Okay? So this is what we're going to output. A sequence of PNGs. I'm going to make a new folder for it in the desktop. I'm going to call it PNG sequence. In there, we're going to make a sequence. And Control F12 to render an animation. Now the cool thing about this is we're just kind of sticking a texture onto a plane and rendering it. So no reason you can't do it super fast in Eevee or something like that. And I'm just going to wait for this to finish rendering. Meanwhile, the goods. Okay, so there's like 150 frames or something. Is it as awkward for you as it is for me? Okay, we have rendered the thing. We should have now a sequence of PNGs that looks like this. So it's like a moving segment of the carpet. Let's see what that looks like. In DaVinci, we go to the thing. Again, any editing program you want to import. Keeps importing this as like not a image sequence. I think you can just do it like this. So you want to line it up. And now you can see the bottle goes over the tile and then it disappears. Now, it looks like it's a bit floaty. To fix that, you just want a better track. But for now, what we can do is the bottle's thrown up. And then as it falls down, we can animate the opacity. So it looks like it just fades into nowhere. There we go. And the faster the fade, the more it looks like it's clipping through the floor. Beautiful. Extra touches, by the way, is if you take the audio, so this is the sound of it falling, you take this and you unlink it, so we only deal with the audio. Go to, this is just what's really going to sell the effect, because it's not just the visual, it's the audio, right? Go to change clip speed, set it to reverse, and it's going to have this like whoosh, sound to it. And that's really going to sell the effect. I'm going to make this even shorter. Beautiful. Okay, a bit of a touch-up we can do to make this blend a bit better. Again, the better the track is, the less this is going to be an issue. We want to kind of fade the edges of this. So what we can do is we could merge this with a transparent, well, I think what you can do is you can like separate, what do I want to do here? I want to separate by RGBA. So I want a dilate and erode node. I want a channel Boolean. So one of these, I haven't used DaVinci in a hot minute. Channel Boolean will let us export out the alpha. So I'm extracting the alpha. I'm saying for red, green, and blue, show the alpha. Take this, dilate it. And we can, dilation kind of makes it smaller and all this. You dilate a little. Whoops. You blur it a little. Not that much. Just a little. So this is our mask before, and this is after. And all we say is load the footage relative to this alpha. So this is what it looked like before and after. We've softened the edges a little. And that should help. And I'm going to decrease the blur a little. Oh, and you want to make sure this is what's going to the output. So now that should blend in a bit better than before, especially like in motion. That looks pretty good to me. Okay, I'm happy with that. So there you go. You now know how to make a water bottle disappear. As always, at the end of these tutorials, I like to pimp the ever-living phone case out of my Patreon. If you want the blend file or the original footage to work with, that is where you can get it. Early access to tutorials, exclusive tutorials, stuff like that. And that is the essence of it. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.